Hey everyone, I just wanted to share with y'all how I made my DIY dumbbell rack. Now keep in mind this rack is custom built to the dumbbells that I own, which are from Dick's Sporting Goods if you want to know, and they are just the plain cast hex dumbbells. And I have a set of weights from 5 to 50 pounds. So maybe you have the exact number and type of weights that I have, or maybe if you're planning on picking the setup, then go right ahead and follow along, but if not, there are just a few measurements you may have to change. So let's get started with the material list. You will need 4 pieces of 1.5 square tubing, and each piece is going to be 2'10" with 45-degree cuts on one end of each piece. Next you'll need is 6 pieces of 1.5" square tubing that are 10 inches long. Those are going to be square cuts at the end of those. Then you'll have 2 pieces of 1.5 square tubing, 8 inches long, and these pieces will have 45 cuts on both ends going the opposite direction. And you'll need 6 pieces of 1.5" angle iron, and you're going to need these pieces 3'1". And lastly, you'll need 2 pieces of 2" by 3" rectangle tubing, and that will be 1'4". Now that we have all the material, let's build this thing. Here I am measuring and marking out all of my cut pieces ahead of time. What you see here is a crow's foot mark, and that ensures the measurement is precise and there is no confusion on where to cut. I then follow up with a speed square to get a square line, and that way the cuts are as straight as possible, making the fit and the welding a lot easier later on. So these are the 2'10" pieces I'm marking out, which needs a 45-degree cut on one end of each piece. I need to make this 45 cut. The back side needs to be 210. So I marked 210 there, and what I did is on this inside I marked 1.5 inches back, because this is 1.5 inches square tube. Basically where the end of that 45, it's going to be 1.5 inches back from this original mark, making that 2'8.5". I'm going to go ahead and make a cut. All I have is a bandsaw, and you can do this with a cutting wheel too. I'm going to score, or like make a cut on here, make a cut there, and then once those are like scored, I'm going to make that 45 on both sides. I'm not gonna lie, it was a pain in the ass, like keeping that blade pretty straight and hitting those marks, but it looks pretty good actually. If you go too deep on when you're scoring it, it's okay, because you're gonna just weld this anyway. So that'll cover up any little scores like that. That'll be all covered up. That actually worked pretty good. Like I said, it was a pain in the ass, but it worked. So after you've done 2 of those, what you're gonna do is use one of the sides that you already cut to make the 8-inch cut for that top piece right there. And then you're gonna do the same for your other 8-inch on the other side while you're at it, and while you have this other 45 pre-cut already. Something like that. Now that the frames, or legs I guess you would call it, are all cut, I'm going to give the 2'10" pieces and the 8-inch pieces a little bevel all the way around each cut. What this does is allow the weld to penetrate deeper, and for lack of better words, welds the 2 pieces of metal together better, rather than just applying the weld to the surface of the material. What I have here is a multi-purpose magnet holder, and I got this from Harbor Freight. These are very inexpensive but very useful when welding. Here I am using it to fit up the 2'10" and the 8" pieces together, and it holds them together at a perfect 90-degree angle. And then I just tack up all 4 sides of the tube. It's important to tack up all your sides because when you weld one side at a time, the heat will make that one side pull, and then suddenly your project will turn out crooked and out of square. And ideally you want to tack on opposite sides first and then do the other 2 opposite sides. Do the same thing to the other leg on the first frame and do the exact same for the second frame assembly.
There you have the 2 frames welded out all the way around. And what I did here is I know that this spacing here needs to be 5 inches, and if you know anything about welding, when you weld, the whatever side you're welding pulls that way because it's really hot, and as it cools it pulls the opposite way. So what I did here was I cut 5 inches of scrap wood. That'll keep my spacing, preventing it from closing this way, and I zip tied around that to prevent it from opening up. So this is from this end to this end is 5 inches, and the same thing for that piece right there. This is the 2x3 rectangle tube, and this is going to be the feet. So I marked out 1'4", which I kind of called for. I'm just gonna make sure that this kind of looks good. It's gonna go right about there, and I think for, you know, each side's gonna stick out about a little more than 1 inch of the 50-pound dumbbell, which is the biggest dumbbell. So kind of like how that looks right there. So I'm just gonna go with that and cut it.
So the bigger the material is, the harder it is to make a square cut with a bandsaw, even if you have it marked out all the way around. Easy way to solve that is, since this is a tube and it's hollow, just cut each face one at a time and you'll effortlessly have a perfect cut every time.
Now I'm gonna lay out where the stand needs to be. So I know this outside spread is 8 inches from this outside end to that outside end. What I did here is a mark center, 8 inches right in the middle, measured 4 inches out on each side, and that gives me my outside spread. And when I'm ready to tack, I'm just going to line those up. But now I'm going to go ahead and get my center going this way. This is 3 inches wide. That gives me a 1.5 inches to center. There's my center going this way. I could come out 3/4 of an inch this way. That gives me that outside, and I could do the same thing here. I could make a, you know, I could make the square here if I wanted to also. Well, there you go. If you want to be super precise in where you're tacking everything up, you could go ahead and make your squares. That way you can be, you know, pretty precise on where you need to tack it up. I got all 4 legs, well, 2 legs welded out, so go ahead and cut those. And just kind of goes to show how much it can. Whoop, I almost fell. Just goes to show how much it could really pull one way or the other. So those are pretty important, or else it'd be, you know, wide up top and then narrow at bottom, or wide at the bottom, depending which side you weld first. All right, now we're gonna go back to marking and cutting. These are going to be 10 inches out of the 1.5 square tube. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to square this cut off, because you can see that it's not very square. Square that off, 10 inches, do that 6 times. Alright, so I laid the legs down. So now we're going to put these support-ons, but they're not going to be square and parallel to the feet and square to the legs. They are going to be at an angle, and I have to find a way to make everything consistent. So what I think I'm going to do is, here I marked where, according to my drawings, this is going to be the top of this support right here for the angle iron. And I'm just going to mark everything out where everything's going to be as if it were flat. And then I'm going to decide to come down on one side, and whatever I come down on this side, I'm going to come up on this side. So let's say I come down an inch here, I'll come up an inch here, put the top of this square tubing on that inch, and put the top of this side of the square tubing on the inch going up. And that way everything will be consistent.
The measurements are for the top of the first support is 5 5/8 from the bottom of the feet. Middle support is 13.5 inches above that, and the top support is 12 7/8 inch above the middle support. But here I am using a bigger square to mark out both legs at the same time. That way it's more reliable than just measuring up from the bottom each leg one at a time. That's just less chances for mistakes. And let's say the legs aren't perfectly parallel to each other, this ensures that my marks are perfectly in line.
This is going to be the front of the rack. So on the front of the rack, I'm going to go down an inch. Back of the rack, I'm going to go up an inch. Square both sides. I'm just going to mark, these are my centers, just so I don't line them up in the wrong spot. So the top of this, or this corner, is going to be the top of this angle. And this corner is going to be the top of this angle. Just like that. There's that corner at the top of this side, this corner at the top of this side. And if you really wanted to center it out, you just kind of take this measurement, which is about 1 7/8. You're going to make it the same as this. This one, move over just a hair. 1 1/16, 1 1/16. So that's center right there. Oh, this is the 20 that will be on the side. Doesn't really matter. I like that angle. I think that'll work. That'll be Yeah, that'll work. Let's go with that. So we're gonna do that to all of them. And then once we do that, we're gonna mark that side too and do the same thing. Going the opposite way. Don't mess that up.
Now that the supports are welded to the frame, all we have to do is put the angle going across to connect the frames, and this will also be the rack that holds the dumbbells. These are 3'1" cuts, and depending how many dumbbells you have and how many rows you want to split them up, this measurement will change. You'll have to measure yourself and make these cuts based off of the longest shelf that you'll have, if that makes sense. Now this one is another measurement that will be commonly changed. This is the spacing of the angle iron, which will be basically slightly smaller than the handle of your dumbbells. In my case, my dumbbell handles are 5 inches, but I actually intend to make my spread more like 4.5, just because those marks are inside the measurement of the two pieces of angle, where the handle fits are to the outside measurement of the two pieces of angle. If you're not following along, I'm sorry, I can't really explain that better, but just make it like 1/2 inch smaller than your handles and tack it up and make sure it fits.
Alright, so now that I have all of these shelves marked out where I need all this angle iron to be, I've got it kind of fit up here. Use that magnet there to hold that end. The next thing that I'm concerned about is making sure that this side and this side is square on one another, because you don't what I could do is I could just put the other piece of angle there, but for me to get close first, what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna measure this outside end and square it up to make sure that this opposite side is the same, and that's how I know they're going to be parallel to each other and square. So now that I have the feet square to each other this way, the only thing I need to worry about are they square this way. I marked out a line here that is parallel to this foot here, and then a 90-degree angle, and instead of drawing it out, I just put this other piece of angle, and as you can see here, we've got about, should be an inch and got about 1 5/8 from, and there's no reason for how far this needs to be, but you got an inch and a little more than, call it 1 5/8 here, and then you ain't got nothing down here. So it looked pretty square, just eyeballing it like that, but it turns out it wasn't square, so I'm glad I did that. So all I'm gonna do is just make everything square and tack it all up.
And the moment of truth, I'm making sure everything fits nicely and it looks good, and I'm pretty happy with the results so far. It is getting me pretty excited to finish this thing up. Since I like it, I'm gonna continue on and do the same for the middle and top shelves. And there you have it. You could be done at this point if you'd like, but I have a limited amount of space in my garage and things need to be portable around here. That means we are putting some casters on this thing. I flipped it over and marked 1/2 inch from each edge of the feet. I tacked both sides of the casters and welded them out. I think just doing 2 sides would be plenty to secure the casters, so I'm going with that. I flipped her over and loaded her up just to see how everything looked. But I am not done yet. I personally love how the plate rack I made turned out with this this army green paint that I used. So I want to do the same thing with the dumbbell rack. So I get as much rust and oils off as possible with some sponges, brushes, and degreaser, and I then add a coat of paint primer. I really don't know if it actually helps when it comes to painting metal or not. I would do a coat with it standing up one way, let it dry for a day, and flip it over to the other side, and you know, get all those difficult places. I would do one coat with it standing up one way, let that dry for a day, and flip it over and do the underside. That was hard to difficult to see or reach with it right side up. I repeat this process with the green paint for 2 full coats. This took a little over a can of primer and a little over 2 cans of paint to complete, right around there. The last thing you can opt for is inserting these tube plugs to give it that professional look. For the 2x3 rectangle tube, I ordered 2x3 tubing plugs and they hammer in just like that. And that's it, ladies and gents. I absolutely love how this turned out. I'm going to be honest though, this son of a gun is heavy, so be careful when you're moving something like this around your gym or your garage. I hope I gave you guys some ideas and learned a thing or two, so please consider liking the video and subscribing to my channel. Thank you for watching. I will see you on the next one.